"Please, don't," she whispered, fear gripping her. But he didn't listen. Overpowering her, he forced his will upon her, ignoring her desperate struggle. She fought, but he was too strong. Tears streamed down her face as she lay there, helpless, the weight of his cruelty crushing her. How it all started. Amoka wiped the sweat off her forehead as she stepped out of the small, one-room house she shared with her mother and younger brothers. The sun was high, casting sharp shadows on the dusty ground of Umwako. She sighed, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. Since her father's passing, life had been tough. Mama Amoka did everything she could, washing clothes, selling fruits at the market, but it was never enough. Amoka had graduated as the best student in her school, but dreams of university seemed far away. There was no money for tuition. One evening, as she helped her mother prepare dinner, she made a decision. "Mama, I will find a job," she said firmly. Her mother looked up from the pot of boiling yam, concern filling her tired eyes. "My daughter, work is not easy. Where will you find one?" "I don't know yet, but I will try." The next morning, Amoka put on her best dress, a simple blue gown, and walked around town, asking for work. She knocked on shop doors, visited offices, and even asked at restaurants. Each time, she heard the same words. No vacancy. Her feet ached, but she refused to give up. Just as the sun began to set, she stopped in front of the largest building in Umwako, the bottled water factory. It belonged to their landlord, Mr. Okafor, a wealthy businessman. Amoka hesitated, then gathered her courage and walked inside. The office smelled of paper and fresh water. A man in a brown suit looked up as she entered. "Yes. Can I help you?" "Sir, I am looking for a job. I just finished secondary school, and I am very hardworking." The man raised an eyebrow. "We need factory workers. The job is tough." "I can do it." 2 days later, Amoka started work. She lifted heavy packs of bottled water, labeled cartons, and cleaned the factory floor. The work was exhausting, but she never complained. Soon, her hard work was noticed. Mr. Okafor's son, Daniel, who managed the factory, saw how fast and smart she was. "She is different," he told his father. "We should promote her." Within 3 months, Amoka was given more responsibilities. She handled records, supervised workers, and even helped with accounting. Her salary increased, and with the extra money, Mama Amoka could finally breathe a little easier. But not everyone was happy with Amoka's rise. There were whispers in the factory. Some older workers grumbled that she was getting special treatment. One woman, Ijeoma, who had worked there for years, watched Amoka with narrowed eyes. "She just got here," Ijeoma muttered. "And now she's acting like she owns the place." One evening, as Amoka locked up the office, she felt a presence behind her. Turning around, she came face to face with Ijeoma. "Enjoying your new position?" Ijeoma's voice was sharp. Amoka nodded politely. "I am just working hard, like everyone else." Ijeoma's lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Be careful, Amoka. Not everyone likes seeing someone rise too fast." Amoka swallowed. Was that a warning? She had no idea that trouble was just beginning. One day, the factory chairman, Mr. Okoro, who was also Amoka's landlord, invited her to his office. "Good morning, sir," Amoka said. "How are you doing, Amoka?" he replied. "I'm fine, sir." "You sent for me?" "Yes, I did." He began complimenting her on her hard work and responsibility. "I'm going to send you back to school as long as you continue being a good girl and hardworking," he said. This news made Amoka extremely happy. She told her mother what the chairman had said, and her mother was overjoyed. This motivated Amoka to take her job even more seriously. The chairman started buying her gifts and clothes, and he even gave her money for her weekly upkeep. One day, the chairman invited Amoka to accompany him to a meeting outside town. She hesitantly agreed, thinking it was work-related. However, she found herself in a hotel with the chairman. Amoka started feeling uneasy. She had thought they were going to a business meeting with other associates, but it was just her and Chief Okoro. "What are we doing here?" Amoka asked, her concern growing. Amoka sat at the edge of the hotel bed, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked around the fancy room, confused and uneasy. The air smelled of expensive perfume, and the dim lights cast long shadows on the walls. She turned to Mr. Okoro, her hands gripping the hem of her dress. "Sir, I thought we were going to a meeting. What are we doing in a hotel?" Mr. Okoro leaned back on the couch, a small smile on his face. "Relax, Amoka. You deserve some rest. You've been working so hard." Amoka swallowed. Something felt wrong. Her instinct screamed at her to leave. I don't think I should be here, sir. I need to go home." Mr. Okoro's smile faded, and his expression turned serious. "Amoka, after everything I have done for you. I gave you gifts, I paid for your weekly upkeep, and I promised to send you back to school. Don't you want to succeed?" Amoka's stomach twisted. She had been so excited about the opportunity to return to school. She had trusted him. But now, she saw the truth. This wasn't kindness. This was something else. "I am grateful, sir, but I cannot stay here," she said firmly, standing up. Mr. Okoro sighed and ran a hand over his bald head. "Think carefully, Amoka. If you leave now, everything ends. No more school, no more support. Your family will struggle again. Are you sure that's what you want?" Amoka felt tears sting her eyes. She thought of Mama Amoka, of her little brothers who finally had enough to eat. She thought of how happy her mother had been when she told her about going back to school. Amoka sat in silence, staring at her reflection in the hotel room mirror. Her once bright, determined eyes now held a shadow of something she couldn't quite name: guilt, regret, or maybe shame. She had never imagined her life would take this turn. At first, she had resisted Chief Okoro's advances with all her strength. She reminded him that he was old enough to be her father, that he had a wife, that she wanted to succeed on her own merit. But the more he pushed, the weaker her resolve became. The promises of a better life, her mother's happiness, and her siblings' well-being clouded her thoughts. He stepped closer, his eyes dark with intent. She shook her head, backing away, her heart pounding. "Please, don't," she whispered, fear gripping her. But he didn't listen. Overpowering her, he forced his will upon her, ignoring her desperate struggle. She fought, but he was too strong. Tears streamed down her face as she lay there, helpless, the weight of his cruelty crushing her. When it was over, he leaned in with a twisted smile. "You'll want more of this," he sneered. "You'll see I'm not as old as you think." She turned away, disgusted, her body shaking with silent sobs. She told herself that maybe it wasn't so bad. He was generous, always giving her gifts, money, and affection. He made sure she lacked nothing. And true to his word, he began processing her admission into a university. At home, Mama Amoka beamed with pride. "My daughter, you are so lucky. Chief Okoro is a good man. See how God has blessed us through him," she would say, not knowing the truth. Amoka forced a smile every time. The weight of her secret grew heavier by the day. At the factory, people whispered behind her back. She noticed the way Ijeoma and the other workers looked at her. Some with envy, some with disgust. "She thinks she's special now," Ijeoma scoffed one day. Let's see how long it lasts. Amoka ignored them, but deep inside, the words stung. One afternoon, as she sat in Chief Okoro's car, staring at the expensive new phone he had just bought for her, she felt a deep emptiness. She had everything she had ever wanted: money, status, and an opportunity for education. But why did she feel so trapped? Then, one night, everything changed. She was at the factory, working late, when Daniel, Chief Okoro's son, walked into the office. He had always been kind to her, treating her like an equal, unlike the other workers who either resented or feared her. "You seem tired," Daniel said, watching her closely. Amoka forced a smile. "Just a long day." Daniel hesitated before speaking again. "Amoka, be careful with my father." Her heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Daniel sighed. "You're not the first girl he has helped. And you won't be the last." A cold chill ran down Amoka's spine. She had thought she was special, that Chief Okoro truly cared for her. But now, doubt began creeping in. Was she just another girl in a long list of others? And if so, what would happen when he got tired of her? Despite the landlord's efforts to care for her family's well-being, Amoka's heart remained heavy. She couldn't shake off the feeling of unease, knowing she was sleeping with a man old enough to be her father. Her mother, however, was oblivious to the price Amoka was paying for the landlord's generosity. She thought the landlord was simply being kind and benevolent towards her daughter. One evening, Amoka couldn't take it anymore. She called her mother and told her she didn't want to work with the landlord anymore. Her mother was taken aback, shouting, "What do you mean you don't want to work with the landlord anymore? How can you say that after everything he's done for us?" The mother's tone turned abusive, but Amoka knew she had to reveal the truth. Maybe then her mother would understand her reasons for quitting. Amoka took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she sat across from her mother in their small living room. The evening air was thick with silence, only broken by the distant sounds of children playing outside. She had thought about this moment for weeks, rehearsing the words over and over in her mind. "Mama, I don't want to work for Chief Okoro anymore," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mama Amoka's face hardened immediately. "What are you saying, Amoka? Do you know what that man has done for us? Your brothers are eating well, I don't have to struggle as much, and he's even sending you to school." Amoka lowered her head, tears stinging her eyes. "Mama, I know. But I can't do it anymore." Mama Amoka stood up, her hands on her waist. "Do you think opportunities like this come easily? Do you want us to go back to suffering?" Her voice was sharp, filled with disbelief and anger. Amoka clenched her fist. She had expected this reaction, but it still hurt. "I am paying a price, Mama," she said, her voice breaking. "A price you don't know about?" Her mother frowned. "What are you talking about?" Amoka felt like her heart was going to explode. She looked at her mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything for them, the woman she loved more than anything, and then, she said the words she had been too ashamed to say before. "Mama, Chief Okoro is not just helping us. He made me his mistress. I've been having sex with our landlord, but it's not consensual. He took me to a hotel and asked me to be his mistress. I refused, but he promised to do more for our family if I agreed. When I still refused, he forced himself on me. Since then, he's been forcing me to have sex with him in his office." A deep, suffocating silence filled the room. The flickering lantern cast long shadows on the walls, and for a moment, it felt as though time had stopped. Mama Amoka blinked, her lips parting slightly as if she had misheard. What did you just say?" Tears streamed down Amoka's face now. "I didn't want to, Mama. I never wanted this. But he kept pressuring me. He made me feel like I had no choice. And I was afraid that if I said no, we would lose everything. Amoka sobbed. I thought I was doing the right thing for us, Mama. But every night, I feel disgusted with myself. I hate myself. I can't live like this anymore. If I refuse to go to the hotel with him, he locks me in his office and forces himself on me. He plays traditional music loudly so no one can hear my screams. Mama, I'm telling you this with tears in my eyes, but your response shocks me. The mother responds, so, you want to quit working for the landlord just because he's interested in you? Do you know how many people are looking for this opportunity? Many of your friends are looking for a chance to elevate their families from poverty, and you're crying about the landlord sleeping with you. Amoka is taken aback by her mother's reaction. Mama, this man is older than father. His youngest child is even older than me. The mother refuses to listen. Do you want us to starve to death, Amoka? After everything I've done for you and your siblings since your father's passing, this is how you want to repay me. You're not going to stop working for the landlord. If you try to, I'll disown you, and you have to leave this house. Her mother was silent, her face pale and unreadable. The weight of Amoka's confession hung in the air like a heavy storm cloud. Then, Mama Amoka lifted her head, her eyes filled with something Amoka hadn't seen in a long time, fire. Amoka lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling as the night stretched on endlessly. The tiny room felt colder than ever, even though sweat clung to her skin. Her mother's words echoed in her head, each one stabbing at her heart like a knife. If you stop now, don't come back. She turned to the side, hugging herself. The reality of her situation pressed down on her like a heavy weight. She had nowhere to go. No one to run to. But she needed to talk to someone. She was desperate. The burden was too much to carry alone. Her mind went to Kate, her best friend since childhood. If there was anyone she could trust, it was Kate. But what if Kate told someone? What if, before she knew it, the whole town found out? People would judge her, whisper about her, mock her. Some might even blame her, saying she knew what she was doing from the start. She let out a shaky breath. The thought of everyone looking at her with disgust made her stomach turn. But the pain in her heart was too heavy. She needed to talk. Making up her mind, she reached for her phone and sent Kate a message. Kate, please, I need to see you. It's urgent. A few minutes later, her phone vibrated. Are you okay? Where do you want to meet? Amoka sat up, glancing at the small clock on the wall. It was almost midnight. Can you meet me at the old playground behind the market? Please, don't tell anyone. Kate's reply came almost immediately. I'm on my way. Amoka slipped on her slippers and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. Taking one last look at her room, she stepped outside, her heart pounding. She had no idea that this meeting with Kate would change everything. Amoka hurried through the quiet streets, her heart pounding with every step. The night air was cool, and the only sounds were the distant barking of stray dogs and the occasional hum of a passing motorcycle. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, feeling exposed even though no one was around. By the time she reached the old playground behind the market, Kate was already there, leaning against a rusty swing. Her face was filled with concern as she rushed toward Amoka. Amoka, what's wrong? You scared me with your message, Kate said, gripping her friend's hands. Amoka looked around nervously, making sure no one else was nearby. Then, without warning, she burst into tears. Kate's eyes widened. Hey, talk to me. What happened? Amoka tried to speak, but her throat felt tight. Finally, she took a deep breath and whispered, Kate. I've done something terrible. Kate frowned. What do you mean? With her hands shaking, Amoka told Kate everything. About the landlord. About the first time he forced himself on her. About the gifts, the money, the promises of school. About how he locked her in his office and played loud music so no one could hear her screams. About how her mother refused to believe her and told her to continue working for him. By the time she was done, Kate was shaking with anger. What? That evil man did all that to you? And your mother, she just let it happen. Amoka wiped her tears. She says we will suffer if I stop. She even threatened to disown me. Kate paced back and forth, running her hands through her braids. Amoka, listen to me. You can't go back there. Ever. Amoka sighed. But where will I go? I have no money. No place to sleep. Kate grabbed her shoulders. You will stay with me. My parents won't mind. But we have to do something about Chief Okoro. We can't let him keep doing this. Amoka shook her head frantically. No, Kate. If people find out, I will be finished. He's powerful. What if he hurts us? Kate's face hardened. So you just let him get away with it? What about other girls? You think you're the only one? Amoka swallowed hard. Deep down, she knew Kate was right. If she didn't speak up, Chief Okoro would do this to someone else. But they had no idea that Chief Okoro was not a man who liked to be refused. And he would not let Amoka go so easily. But was she ready for the battle that lay ahead? Days later, Amoka made a disturbing discovery: she had missed her monthly period. She started feeling sick and experiencing pregnancy symptoms. Alarmed, she confided in her friend Kate about her suspicions. Together, they decided to take a pregnancy test. The result confirmed Amoka's worst fears: she was pregnant. Amoka sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. The two pink lines seemed to scream at her. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. She looked up at Kate, her best friend, who sat beside her with wide eyes. Amoka, it's positive, Kate whispered. Amoka swallowed hard. What am I going to do? Kate reached for her hand. First, we breathe. Then, we think. But thinking was impossible. Her mind was a whirlwind of panic. She had always been careful. How did this happen? For the next few days, Amoka tried to ignore the truth. She buried herself in work, avoiding her mother's watchful eyes. But the nausea wouldn't let her pretend for long. One morning, as she rushed out of the house for work, a sudden wave of sickness hit her. She barely made it to the sink before vomiting. Her mother, Mama Ifeoma, stood behind her, hands on her chest. Amoka, she whispered, her voice shaking. What is happening to you? Amoka wiped her mouth, avoiding her mother's gaze. It's nothing, Mama. Maybe I ate something bad. But her mother was not a fool. Tears filled her eyes. Tell me the truth, my daughter. Are you pregnant? Amoka froze. The truth sat heavy on her tongue. Lying was useless. With a shaky breath, she nodded. To her shock, her mother's face broke into a wide smile. Oh, my daughter. You are carrying a child. This is wonderful news. Amoka blinked. You're happy. Happy. Mama Ifeoma clapped her hands in excitement. I am proud of you. My grandchild is coming. Amoka wanted to cry. How could her mother be happy when she was drowning in fear? Before she could protest, her mother had already grabbed her handbag. Come, let's go. Amoka frowned. Go where? To your workplace. I must tell Chief Okoro myself. Panic shot through Amoka. Mama, no. Please. But her mother had already stepped out of the house, dragging her along. The journey to Chief Okoro's office felt like a nightmare. Amoka's hands were sweaty, her heart beat unsteady. She prayed her mother would change her mind. But no. As soon as they arrived, Mama Ifeoma marched into the office like a queen. The security men barely had time to stop her before she pushed through the doors. Chief Okoro, a tall man with a serious face, looked up from his desk in surprise. "What is the meaning of this?" Mama Ifeoma beamed. "Chief Okoro, I bring you good news." She turned to Amoka. "Tell him, my daughter." Amoka could barely speak. Her lips trembled. I'm pregnant." The room fell silent. Chief Okoro's expression changed. His brows furrowed, his lips tightening into a thin line. Then, he scoffed. "And what does that have to do with me?" Amoka's heart stopped. Her mother's smile faded. "What do you mean?" Chief Okoro leaned back in his chair. "I have no idea what you're talking about. That child is not mine." Amoka felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "Chief, but you..." Before she could finish, he signaled to the security. "Get them out of here." The guards grabbed Amoka and her mother. "Chief, please." Mama Ifeoma screamed, struggling against them. "You will deny your own child?" But Chief Okoro had already turned away. Amoka's vision blurred with tears. How had something that was supposed to be good turned into her worst nightmare? Amoka lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her eyes were swollen from endless crying. The shame was too much to bear. Her mother barely spoke to her now, not out of anger, but regret. "I should never have encouraged you," Mama Ifeoma whispered one evening, sitting by Amoka's bedside. "I thought I was celebrating you, but I only led you into disgrace." Amoka said nothing. What was there to say? Her mother's pride had turned to shame. The neighbors whispered behind her back. Her colleagues at work barely hid their sneers. She could hear them giggle when she walked past. Some openly called her a fool. Did she really think Chief Okoro would accept her? She wanted to trap a rich man. Look at her now. Serves her right. The words cut deeper than a knife. Amoka stopped going out. She stopped eating. She wished she could disappear. One evening, Kate sat beside her, watching her closely. "Amoka, you can't go on like this." "What do you want me to do?" Amoka whispered. Kate hesitated before speaking. There's a way out." Amoka turned her head. "What way?" Kate looked around as if someone might be listening. "We can end it." Amoka's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Kate sighed. "You don't have to keep the pregnancy. I know a pharmacy where we can get the drugs." Amoka's lips trembled. She had never thought of it before, but now, the idea planted itself in her mind. No more shame. No more whispers. Just freedom. "Are you sure it's safe?" she asked. Kate nodded quickly. "Many girls have done it. You'll be fine." Amoka hesitated, but deep down, she was desperate. She couldn't live like this anymore. The next day, Kate took her to a small pharmacy in a quiet street. A man with tired eyes handed them a small packet. "Take one now, and another in 6 hours," he instructed. Amoka's hands shook as she took the first pill that night. She closed her eyes and prayed the pain wouldn't be much. But by morning, something was wrong. A sharp, unbearable pain gripped her stomach. She clutched her belly and screamed. Kate rushed to her side, shaking her. "Amoka. What's happening?" I don't know," Amoka gasped, tears streaming down her face. Then, suddenly, blood. So much blood. Kate screamed for help. Neighbors rushed in. Someone called a taxi, and before Amoka knew what was happening, she was in the hospital, drifting in and out of consciousness. She woke up to the sound of beeping machines. The scent of antiseptic filled her nostrils. A nurse stood beside her, checking something on a clipboard. Where am I?" Amoka croaked. "You're in the hospital," the nurse said softly. "You had complications." Amoka's breath hitched. "My baby." The nurse's face was unreadable. "You lost it." A deep, crushing pain settled in Amoka's chest. She turned her head to the side, hot tears slipping down her face. It was over. Just then, a gentle voice spoke beside her. "Amoka." She turned her head. A woman stood there, dressed in a neat suit. She had kind eyes. "My name is Mrs. Ada. I'm a human rights activist," she said. "I heard your story, and I want to help you." Amoka blinked. "Help me?" Mrs. Ada nodded. "Chief Okoro thought he could throw you away like trash. But you deserve justice. I will make sure he answers for what he did." Amoka's lips parted in shock. No one had ever spoken for her before. "And not just that," Mrs. Ada continued. "I see potential in you. You deserve a future. I want to give you a scholarship to continue your education." Amoka's breath caught in her throat. "A scholarship?" Mrs. Ada smiled warmly. "Yes. You have a chance to turn your life around." For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in Amoka's heart. Maybe her story wasn't over yet. Amoka could hardly believe what she was hearing. After all the shame, pain, and loss, someone was offering her a second chance. A new beginning. Tears filled her eyes as she stared at Mrs. Ada. "Why would you do this for me?" she whispered. Mrs. Ada reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "Because you are not the first girl this has happened to, and you won't be the last. But you can rise again, Amoka. You are more than your past." Amoka swallowed the lump in her throat. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Her mother, who had been sitting quietly in the corner of the hospital room, rushed forward. "Madam, you mean my daughter can go back to school?" "Yes," Mrs. Ada confirmed. "She will have full sponsorship, tuition, books, everything." Mama Amoka dropped to her knees, raising her hands in gratitude. "God bless you. God bless you, madam." Amoka let out a shaky breath. Was this really happening? Days passed, and her body slowly healed, but the emotional scars remained. Whenever she closed her eyes, she remembered the pain, the fear, the shame. But now, there was something else, a spark of hope. One afternoon, Mrs. Ada returned to the hospital with legal documents. "We are taking Chief Okoro to court," she announced. Amoka's stomach twisted. "Court?" "Yes. He must take responsibility for his actions." "You deserve justice, Amoka." Amoka hesitated. She had spent weeks avoiding people, hiding from their judgmental stares. But now, she would be standing before everyone, facing the man who had denied her and thrown her away. I don't know if I can," she whispered. Mrs. Ada smiled reassuringly. "You don't have to do this alone. I will stand by you, and so will my team. But the choice is yours." Amoka thought of all the whispers, the cruel laughter, the way her colleagues at work had mocked her. If she walked away now, would they always see her as the foolish girl who got used and dumped? Something inside her hardened. No. She was tired of being a victim. Lifting her chin, she took a deep breath. "I'll do it." Mama Amoka clapped her hands. "That's my daughter." Kate, who had been by her side through everything, squeezed her shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Amoka." The following weeks were a whirlwind. Amoka moved into a new place sponsored by Mrs. Ada's organization. She began preparing for her scholarship exams while also working with the legal team. The case quickly became a hot topic in the community. News spread that Amoka was taking Chief Okoro to court. Some people supported her, but others laughed. She's wasting her time. A man like Chief Okoro will never go down. She should have just accepted her fate. Does she think she can win against someone so powerful? The doubts gnawed at Amoka, but every time she saw Mrs. Ada's determined face, she straightened her shoulders. She was no longer that scared girl who ran from shame. Days turned into weeks, and Amoka found refuge in Kate's home. Kate's parents, though shocked by her story, welcomed her with open arms. But Amoka knew she couldn't hide forever. With Kate's support, she found the courage to report Chief Okoro. The road to justice was not easy. He tried to silence her with threats, bribes, and intimidation. But something had changed in Amoka. She was no longer the scared girl trapped in his office. She was a fighter now. When the truth finally came to light, the town erupted in shock. Other girls began speaking up, revealing that Amoka was not his only victim. But the real battle was with her mother. The woman who had once turned her back on her now stood before her, tears streaming down her face. "Amoka, forgive me," she whispered, guilt weighing heavy in her voice. Amoka's heart ached. She wanted to hate her mother for what she had done, but deep down, she saw the broken woman who had been blinded by desperation. "I forgive you, Mama," she said. "But I will never let anyone control my life again." With the nightmare behind her, Amoka took the first steps toward rebuilding her life. She returned to school, determined to create a future where no girl would have to suffer as she did. She had lost so much, but she had gained something greater: her voice, her strength, and her freedom. The court day arrived faster than she expected. As she stood outside the courtroom, her palms sweaty, she felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Mrs. Ada. "Are you ready?" Amoka took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "Yes." She stepped forward. She was ready to fight. With enough evidence, Chief Okoro was arrested, and his power crumbled. Hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please share your thoughts in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on more amazing content like this one. See you in the next video.